Good afternoon. My name is Hersh Libo. This is May the 10th, 2010. I'm here with Lester Charlack on behalf of the Jewish Historical Society of Lower Fairfield County to interview Mr. Jack Alexander at his home at 108 Studio Road in Stamford. Jack, it's a pleasure to be here.
Asked me to do this, and it's really a pleasure to.
Tell us about where you were born.
Well, I was born in New York City in 1928, and subsequent to when I was about 6 months old, my parents moved to Woodmere, Long Island, and so I really grew up in Woodmere.
Where did your parents come from?
Both my parents were born in this country, in New York City. My father was born in 1895. My mother in 1905.
So you can go back to your grandparents from where they came from in Europe.
I can, but unfortunately, I never knew any of my grandparents. In fact, I was very envious as a child about about other children having grandparents. I grew up without. All my grandparents had passed away by the time I was born.
You have brothers, sisters?
Yes, I have a sister, one sister, Betty, who lives in New York City. She's an artist and has a loft in the city.
You went to school where?
I started out in public school. I still remember my kindergarten teacher, Miss Hardell, who at the time I thought was a very old lady. When I went back to see her when I was in high school, I realized she was only a few years older than I was, and seemed very, very young when I met her when I was a high school student.
And did you go to high school in Long Island? Or
Yes, in Woodmere.
Woodmere.
I went to a day school, a private day school, Woodmere Academy.
Woodmere Academy, and then from there you went to college?
Then I went to college, Lafayette College, right out of high school. And it was an unusual time because I graduated high school in 1946. And that was right after the Second World War, and all the GIs who had free college were going to school. It was very difficult to get in school. Schools were very crowded. I was not accepted immediately in Lafayette, although I was in the top 20% of my class. Colleges then had quotas for Jewish students, and apparently that quota had been filled and I was not accepted. So I started out going to an emergency college that the state of New York set up in Plattsburgh, New York, in an army base. And I was there only 2 or 3 weeks when I was accepted at Lafayette. It was a very interesting experience because here I was with a lot of men, it was all men, that were considerably older than I was. I was just a green high school graduate. These are all men who were veterans of the Second World War. And but they all liked me. I was almost a kind of a mascot. And what happened was, in the cafeteria, the food was served cafeteria style, and because it was an army base, there were no dishes. They served the food on tin trays, which really weren't washed well. They were greasy, and I complained. I said, "Look, we can't eat under these conditions. It's unsanitary. These trays are filthy." So all the guys in line says, keep quiet, you know, you're going to be cleaning out the grease traps of the commissary. And, you know, they felt they were still in the army. So they got those trays cleaned. And because of the way I spoke up, they elected me honorary president of the barracks, where about 30 or 40 men slept in these barracks, with GI barracks, double-decker bunks.
What did your parents do for a living?
My father, education went through 8th grade. and then he went to work. He grew up in the Bronx. He was raised by an aunt under very difficult circumstances in a railroad flat where the toilet was in the hall. Take a bath, they brought a bathtub into the kitchen, heated water. So he went to work when he was right out of 8th grade. But very fortunately, he went to work as an office boy in a textile converter. And working there, he was in the front office. And he was able to meet, because he's a very personable person, the executives, because that was his job, carrying papers from desk to desk. And when he was 18, he decided to go in business for himself as a textile converter. And what that is, independent merchants buy gray goods from the mills in New England. The mills were all in New England then. And convert them into prints or dye the fabrics for the retail trade or for the dress trade. And so my father had experience as a salesman, because he worked up for a salesman where he was working before. So he started his own business. And he started with not cotton, but rayon, which was a brand new fabric at that time. And it was really a new industry. And it was terrible because the fabrics were sleazy. It was called artificial silk. But there was a market for it because it was cheap. And after a while, he got the idea, because he took his brother into the business, a younger brother, that they would sell this rayon, dye it black, and sell it to the casket trade, where all the defects wouldn't make any difference. And because it was black, you wouldn't see it. And it was a fraction of the cost of silk. The caskets were lined with silk at that time. And he was able to sell, of course, undersell the silk and still make a very big profit. So by the time he was 21, he had amassed substantial capital for somebody just starting in business with this one particular product. Of course, he sold other things too.
And your mother's background?
And my mother was one of 8 children. She grew up also in the Bronx. She was the youngest. By the time she was 16 or 17, both of her parents had died. But her older brothers lived at home, and she sort of managed the house for them. And my father was friendly with her older brothers, and that's how he met my mother.
Right. So we'll go back to your college days. You finished college, you graduated with honors?
Yeah, oh yeah. I had, fortunately, a very good private school background in high school. So when I went to college, I was really an outstanding student. If I had gone to maybe a more competitive college or without people that had come back from service who weren't used to studying, but I knew how to study, so I did very well in college. And I was also well-liked, and I was fortunate that in the economics department, they had an investment club. And I was very involved with that investment club, managing it, and deciding on, with groups and committees, buying stock and so on. So I graduated magna cum laude from Lafayette College. I was elected to Phi Beta Kappa there in my junior year, which was kind of unusual. So I decided that that would be a good thing to go into. My father was sort of instrumental in advising me what to do. And one thing he said is, don't go in the retail business. Why? Well, his father was a retail optometrist. And many days, my father would be in the store, and only 1 or 2 customers would come in. So he said, look, you want to be in a business, and of course he was in a business as a salesman and a textile converter, where you go out and you find the customers. You take the initiative. Don't go into something where you have to wait for people to come to you. So I thought it would be interesting to go in the security business where with a little capital you could make some money.
So what was your first job?
My first job was with a Gottesman and Company, who happened to be paper merchants, but they also had an investment bank. And I worked for them, and I was hoping to work in the investment bank, but they didn't want me to do that. So I left there, and I went to Solomon Brothers in Hutzler, which was predecessor to the present Solomon Brothers, who has now been absorbed into another firm, but it was Solomon Brothers in Hutzler. And my pitch to them was to start a stock department, stock analysis department. They were a bond house, essentially. They dealt in corporate bonds, government bonds. They were one of the largest bond dealers on the street at that time. So I started for them, analysis department to try to get their salesmen who were already selling the investment trust bonds to get them to sell them stock. Well, it really didn't work out because the salesmen were not used to selling stock, and they were afraid of jeopardizing their bond connections by pushing stock. So that really didn't work out too well. So I left there after an argument with the senior partner, Rudy Smutney at the time. And, we left under circumstances where I was essentially told to leave, that I was too aggressive. So then I went to work for an outfit called New England Industries. New England Industry was run by a man by the name of Jacob, spelled Michael, but he pronounces it Michelle. He was an investment banker in Frankfurt, Germany, that left there in 1935 and was able to get substantial capital out of the country and start a business here. And they had various interests. They had coal mines, they did some oil drilling, but they also had a stock portfolio. And so I was hired to run that stock portfolio. And the business expanded, we did well. I brought in a friend, buddy, William Fox, to help me. And we developed some really good ideas for him. And our idea was, though, to accumulate enough stock in some company where we could take it over. And we thought we had a good company that fit that mold, but he would not, the principal, put enough money into it. So we said, look, to each other, we've got to start our own investment company and raise our own money, and so we can make the final decisions. We don't have to bring it to somebody else, but to make the decisions. So we did that. We started with a very small capital. I think we started with like $200,000 of capital.
That was what year?
That was in 1959.
And that was where, in New York?
In New York, yeah. Now, of course, we couldn't pay any rent, so we knew several people in the business, and we got free office space in exchange for ideas. And we had very nice office space. We're in the Seagram building on Park Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
But we had free rent. Well, after a while, we started to do well, and we decided that our ideas were worth more than the rent, and we were going to we'll set up our own office. At that time, New York State put in a very high capital gain tax. So we said, look, no point in living here. We were both living in Long Island at the time. I lived in Rockville Center. My partner lived in a town very close by. Let's move to New Jersey or Connecticut. New Jersey didn't have any income tax either at that time. So we decided, well, we looked around, moved to Connecticut. And where to move to, we really had no idea. We knew we didn't want to move to Darien, there were no Jews there. And we didn't know anything about New Canaan, Greenwich, anything, but we did know a little bit about Stamford because I had a cousin that lived here. So we came up here and looked at a house and found that you could buy a house, and the present house of living is the house I bought, on a whole acre of land. And after living in Long Island on 100 by 150 lot, I mean, this looked like a farm to me. A whole acre with surrounded by a forest. So we moved
So
here.
when you moved up here, were you married or you got married?
Yeah, yes. I was married.
So tell us about your marriage, who you met,
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah, I met my wife, Charlotte Marie Temerson, because her sister's brother was roommate of Buddy Fox, my business partner. So we met that way. And she was living in New York. And we went together for about a year, and then we were married in 1958, 59. I think I wrote it down here, I looked it up. I should remember my anniversary date. What did I say? I looked it up because I have the information.
Okay, well, I think it was I don't have it right in front of me, but at any rate, what was the name of your company?
Started out Alexander Fox and Company, and then when my partner retired after 10 years, he said he had enough. But I really liked doing it. So I continued with most of the partners, and I called it Alexander Associates. And we were, interesting, we were structured the way the present hedge funds is structured, and which was very unusual at the time. We patterned our partnership after the Newman Graham firm. And we knew all about them because after graduating Lafayette College, I went to Columbia to study with Ben Graham, and David Dodd. And they had written, which was then the definitive text on security analysis. In fact, it's called security analysis. And Ben Graham had this fund with Newman, and they set it up in a way that the profits were divided unevenly. So the compensation came in as capital gain. Now, the hedge funds today take 20%, and say if there's $100 of capital gain, the limited partners get $80 of that, and the general partner gets $20 of that, irrespective of the general partner's investment. So in other words, the compensation comes in to your income as capital gain, if there is gains. And we did have gains in the early years, so we did well.
Right. So going back to your marriage, apparently it was 1959,
Yeah, 1959.
and where were you married?
Yeah, in
New York?
Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where Charlotte's family lived.
Oh.
Her father was a second generation. Her father was born in this country. Her grandfather started the business, Charles Temerson and Sons, which they were scrap dealers. Originally started out with a horse and wagon collecting scrap, established a scrap yard, then became wholesale dealers for Bethlehem Steel and other steel companies selling new steel, as well as operating the scrap yard. And this is not unusual in the country, because these scrap dealers know each other, and Charlotte told me about it. And a lot of them are Jewish. because it was a business that you got into simply, it was the reverse of peddling. You collected the scrap.
Look,
And it was easy to get into, it didn't require capital. And so throughout the South, and I think throughout many places in the country, these scrap dealers were Jewish.
So she was born in Alabama,
Yes.
and what brought her to the New York area?
She was working for Saks Fifth Avenue. And she was single, working there. And that's when I met her.
Right, so you both came up here, you started a family?
Yeah, we first were married, we lived in Rockville Center, Long Island for a year. And then our first son was born actually in Rockville Center. We moved here, he was a few months old. And our other two children.
What was his name, or his name?
Moses.
Moses. How many children do you have?
Three, three boys. The oldest is Moses, he was born in Rockville Center, but really raised here. And Julius is my middle son, and Robert, who is my youngest.
Right. Tell me, what do they do? Are they in business with you, or?
No. In fact, I wanted them to go to Lafayette College, took them all down there. No. That's smaller than my high school. They went to Rippowan High School here and West Hill High School. Moses went to Syracuse. He's an accountant. And Julius went to Cornell, and he had a couple of degrees in a Bachelor of Science, a Bachelor of Arts in Computer Science. And he went to work for Arthur Anderson Company, not the accounting division, but the consulting division, which is now Accenture. And he worked for them. He did very well. He got stock. And my advice to him, which I learned from Ben Graham, is that you don't own stock in the company that you work for. Because if the company goes bad and you lose your job, then your stock isn't worth anything. So as soon as he got his options, which were in the money, he sold them, which worked out very well, because Arthur Anderson didn't run into a lot of trouble. So he cashed in all his options. He ended up with quite a bit of capital. And then he started to be an investor. Now he works for my youngest son, which is a pattern that followed through from high school. My youngest son was very entrepreneurial, and when he was in high school, he took photographs, same as I did, but he parlayed that into a business. One of the things he did was when there were golf tournaments, he would take pictures, slides. He arranged with a lab, this was before digital of course, he arranged with a lab to have these slides developed immediately. So we'd take the pictures in the morning, have the slideshow ready for the dinner in the evening. And the people loved it. They loved seeing their pictures playing golf that morning. And that was his business. Well, he couldn't handle it all himself, so he hired his older brother Julius to work for him. Another thing he did was, and which I did, I was a ham radio operator, so I was always, I never involved technically in a living, but as a hobby, I built radios. And I had one of the first computers, which was a TRS-80 made by Radio Shack. And my sons were then in high school, and they became interested, and we learned how to program this thing. And there were very few programs. There were word processing programs were very limited. VisiCal hadn't even been invented. That was the predecessor to Lotus 123, which was the predecessor to now Excel. So they were very familiar with computers. And that's why Julius and both Robert, my youngest, when they were in school, Robert went to Boston University. When they were in school, they studied computers. And Robert went to work for I don't know the name, a small computer firm that installed and service computers. But shortly after, he went in business for himself, and of course he couldn't pay the rent either. So he shared office space with me in Ridgeway Center. And his business was point of sale computers, which was fairly new then, where the computer was really a cash register, and it kept the inventory as well as ringing up the sale. This was very new. IBM had not even invented the microcomputer then. There was no IBM computers, only mainframes. But the TRS-80 was available, and he sold this to shoe stores. Apparently, shoe stores, women's shoe stores, have a problem with inventory, because if you have the wrong sizes, and you don't have the inventory, you can't make the sale. And if you have too much inventory, it requires too much capital. So the inventory is apparently very important in women's shoe stores. So that was the nucleus of his business. And when IBM compatible computers came out, he had software. He didn't write it, but there was software available, and he sold that. One of his customers, and he also sold lawyers and where they network computers, which was comparatively new at the time. So he built up a very nice business. One of his customers was his wife's father, actually, who had a business of auditing accounts payable. Levy, who was his wife's father, Jim Connolly, was president, I think, of Saks Fifth Avenue, and he was very well aware that in the retail business there was a problem of duplicate paying of accounts payable. So after he retired, he started a business to audit the accounts payable records, the old records of retail businesses. So he had this business, and he had 3 or 4 associates that worked for him. And Libby, that's Robert's wife, worked in that business. So Robert got them as a client. And what he did for them was, instead of them going to the file drawers and taking out the paper invoices, all these firms had mainframe computers with big reels of tape. That's what it was on. And Robert wrote programs to convert this tape data into a spreadsheet form that could be used on the microcomputers, on IBM microcomputers or similar computers. So now this software would analyze payments. So it increased their productivity tremendously. So he spent more and more time working for them. Well, finally they said, look, you've got us to vote full-time here, because you have to, we're expanding the business. So he sold that business, his present business, and he worked for them full-time. This business, because it was computerized, now of course the competitors, they're number 2 in the country now. They have like 400 employees.
What's the name of the company?
Connolly Associates. And he is their vice president in charge of the data processing. And they have, they run, big data processing control rooms. They're in several locations.
Right. So are you still active in business, or are you retired?
No, I'm retired.
You're retired.
I retired in 1997. What happened was the market became, I felt, very overvalued. This was the dot-com era, and it carried a lot of stocks with it. And I was very, I'm not a trader, very value-oriented, on the theory that you can go in and analyze a company. If you can analyze a company for estate tax purposes, a private company, decide what it's worth. You could decide what a public company is worth using similar standards and so on. You compare that to the price. And if the price is substantially discounted from what you think the company is worth, it's a buy. And if it's just fairly priced, well, you may hold it, but you wouldn't buy it. And if it's overpriced, you sell it. And that was how I operated. Well, in this period of time, it seemed to me that companies, not the market, I don't know anything about the market, but that companies were substantially overpriced. So I was about 70% in cash. And my partners were, my investors, were very itchy. And, look, you know, you're 70, but you can't make any money. You know? I said, look, this is the way I feel. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to give you your money back. I'm retiring. And I did. And I gave, I liquidated all except for a few holdings that I felt were undervalued. I gave them as mainly cash. And if they wanted the stock, I gave them the stock. If not, I liquidated the stock. And that's when I retired.
So what do you do since then? I mean, I know you have some hobbies. You mentioned photography. I don't know if you still...
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm still very active.
And what else?
I do, you know, digital now. I have a dark room, which I don't use anymore. I used to process all my own pictures. I don't do that. It's all digital. Now I do everything on computer with Photoshop. Mm-hmm. And I'm also a ham radio operator. I still have my license, K1UL. My father had a boat, and I was always liked the water. So when I was living in Long Island before I was married, I had some motorboats. I used to take them out to Montauk fishing and have friends out there. When I moved to Connecticut, I sold the boats. I had young children. It wasn't really a good idea to take them. But as soon as they were old enough to swim, which was, I guess the youngest was maybe 4. Of course, they had life jackets on, but they could swim. I bought a sailboat. I bought an ensign, a 22.5-foot ensign from Jed Isaacs. And I sailed that for 4 years, and we liked it. And then I bought a bigger boat, a Morgan 34. Kept that boat for almost 30 years, raced that and cruised it. Spent about 12 or 13 summers cruising in Maine.
You still have a boat?
Oh yeah. Sold Oh Boys, that was the Morgan 34, 6 years ago. It required a major refit, and the boat was then 30 years old. So it really didn't pay to put the money into that boat. And there were more modern boats with more modern materials. So I bought a CNC 99, which has, for example, a carbon fiber mast, carbon fiber sails.
How big a
very
boat
high
is that?
tech, 33 feet.
33 feet. So who was your crew? Do you have grandchildren?
My crew was originally friends like Milton Mann, Sid Androphy, Lloyd Fisher. But pretty soon, all these guys decided to buy their own boats. So I lost them as crew. So I recruited a new crew. Charlotte always raced with me, and my sons crewed for me, and they still do. And now my grandchildren are crewing.
How many grandchildren do you have?
9.
9?
9. And the name of this new CNC 99, which is really a fast boat, is 9 Kids. And our first race is this Thursday, this coming Thursday, May 13th. And Jake, my oldest grandchild, will be crewing for me.
So what's the range, ages of the children, grandchildren?
Oh, the grandchildren. They age, run in age from, Jake is, he's 19, and the youngest is 12.
Very nice.
Close.
Any girls? Or all boys?
Oh yeah. There's girls and boys. It's 9. There's 4. Let's see, 4 girls, 5 boys.
Very nice. Now, you've lived here that is in Stamford, for about 50 years.
Yeah, when I first moved up here, let me tell you.
Yeah.
When I first moved up here, everybody said, you should have seen this place before you moved here. In Ridgeway Center, where Ridgeway Center is, there was the circus, pitched their tents. It was a big field. When I came here, Stamford was really in a transition. The stores like Saks Plumbing and so on were still in downtown Stamford. They were just moving out. Urban renewal was just coming in. And I remember very clearly seeing a model of what urban renewal would look like. And downtown Stamford was just starting to be torn down. Those places were being vacated. So there was a real transition going on in Stamford. There were no high-rise buildings that we have now. So I really saw Stamford as a change. For the people that were living here before I moved here, the change was tremendous. For me, the transition was taking place as I was living here. So you could see it, but it wasn't as traumatic as the people.
Can you think of any one or two things that most stand out in your mind about this change here in Stamford?
Oh, definitely. One of the things that changed was when I lived here, there were neighborhood schools when I first moved here. The kids went to the school nearest to where they lived. When my children were in junior high school, they had already started cross-busing. And the schools really changed at that time. But they had pretty good ability grouping, and my kids went all through public school, did very well in public school, and got into good schools. So I was happy with the schools.
So your boys went to public school,
Yes.
not to prep schools and all that. And you thought that the educational process was...
Yeah, I started them out for the first 3 grades in King School because we felt that it was very important to get that foundation. But after that, they went to public schools.
You've been active in Jewish affairs here in Stamford?
Yeah, well, active in Temple Sinai. I was always one, the day I moved here, Charlotte and I reserved Friday nights for Shabbat services. And we went every Friday night when we were in town. We didn't make any other commitments. We didn't go to movies. We didn't have dinner parties or accept any invitations. And so in that sense, I was active in the temple. As an obligation, I felt it necessary also to participate in the governors. And I was on the board for many years. I was president of the Brotherhood and president of the Temple Sinai in Stamford.
So what do you plan to do for the next 10, 20 years of your life?
Well, I plan to keep working, which is investing. Probably I'll keep doing that for a couple of years after I die.
How did you find living here as a Jew compared to, we'll say, living in Long Island, where there were so many Jewish people? Here there were an overabundance of non-Jews. Did you find anti-Semitism? Did you have any problems?
Never encountered any anti-Semitism here. Never. It was what I was surprised to find, and I guess this has changed now, that there were certain restrictions where Jews didn't live, and we were told that when we moved here. One was Ravona Woods, which is now almost all Jewish. Another was over near the Stamford Hospital. I don't remember the neighborhood. But other than that, Jews didn't seem to live in any particular place. It was all mixed up. When we moved to this street, it was a new street developed by Jesse Hartman, and The houses were built by partnership of Fieber and Lampke. And it was completely mixed. There were maybe half and half, Jews, non-Jews. And everybody was very friendly.
I just want,
I was very active in the Stanford Camera Club and exhibiting in the salon class. And these are some of the pictures that I took that were prize-winning pictures. I was also president of the club for a while. And these pictures travel around to different clubs for national and exhibitions and